This is Mac OS Ken.
A very bad, no good day for Apple. An Apple VP jokes his way out of a job and make it all better with television. It is Friday, the 30th of September, 2022. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Trade Coffee. Get $30 off your first order plus free shipping at drinktrade.com/macosken. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macosken. It might have been a good day for Apple and shares of Apple. Rosenblatt Securities raised its price target on Apple. Counterpoint Research said the Cupertino company was still running away with a huge chunk of global smartphone revenue and a much chunkier chunk of smartphone profits, and a slate of release dates for Apple TV Plus series headed back to the streamer. As days went, stood to be mellow, with an underlying feeling of things are good. Then, BofA analyst Wamsi Mohan wrecked the markets, and an Apple exec lost his job for being crass on TikTok. Let's start with Mr. Mohan. Apple 3.0 ran part of a note he wrote, wherein he cut his price target on Apple and lowered his rating on the Cupertino company's shares, saying that Apple shares have been perceived as a relative safe haven to this point. He had big buts, and he could not lie. Actually, he had a however. However, says his note. It means but. However, says his note, we see risk to this outperformance over the next year, and we expect material negative estimate revisions driven by weaker consumer demand, services already in slowdown, and we expect products to follow. Perceived risks include, and I'm paraphrasing these, consumer spending, specifically lack thereof, could kill iPhone 14 growth. Apple's slowing services segment could keep slowing. The Pro Max end won't offset revenue declines if unit sales decline. If sales decline and revenue declines, Apple stock will take a hit. Buyers aren't buying iPads and Macs the way they were at the height of the pandemic, and of course, there is still pressure from a stronger dollar. With that, the analyst dropped his rating on Apple shares from buy to neutral. He also slashed $25 from his price target, lowering it from $185 to $160. It was the drop heard round the investing world, according to a piece from CNBC. The Fintertainment site says BofA's downgrade of Apple sparked a tech sell-off, sending Alphabet and Microsoft to one-year lows. According to the site, Microsoft ended Thursday down 1.5%. Alphabet was down 2.6%. Meta was down 3.7%. Amazon was down 2.7%. And Tesla was down 6.8%. Also, the Dow was down 1.5%. The Nasdaq was down 2.8%, and Apple was down 4.9%, or 7.36. It ended the day at 142.48. And it could have been such a lovely day. Sure, smartphone sales and revenue are down around the planet, though Counterpoint Research says not for Apple and Samsung. According to the firm, a fall in global handset shipments due to factors including Chinese lockdowns and ongoing geopolitical uncertainty caused the revenues to decline despite the average selling price, or ASP, going up by 6% in the same period. Consequently, the annual operating profit growth of 6% corresponded with ASP growth rather than shipment decline, reaching $13.1 billion in the second quarter of this year. If you can figure out exactly what's happening in the Counterpoint numbers, I tip my hat to you. It sounds like, from the firm's release, any good news is either Apple-driven or negligible. Given that handset revenues as well as profits are largely driven by Apple, the firm says, we expect a growth in both the aspects in the second half of the year. That is the Apple-driven part. As for the negligible, Counterpoint seems to indicate that numbers are suffering from a good compare. A quote from a Counterpoint senior analyst says much of the annual growth can be attributed to a smaller base in the COVID-battered second quarter of 2021, rather than to consistent growth in operating profits through the quarters. So remember when nobody was buying phones because everybody was afraid they were dying? Yeah, Q2 of this year seems to have been this lovely window of less fear and more money. Lots of might not last going around, though. Counterpoint Associate Director Jan Strajek was quoted in the release saying, "Revenue growth in the second half of the year when compared to the first half is a near certainty due to the cyclical launch of the highly profitable and relatively economic downturn-resistant iPhone. But with geopolitical uncertainty worsening, inflation levels rising, and fears of recession growing, the handset market is bound to get impacted and may take longer to return to the trajectory predicted prior to the pandemic." What's the phrase? A lie will go round the world while the truth is still putting on its boots or pulling up its pants or something. See also negative versus positive sentiment. Apple seems to have spent not 1 minute of Thursday's trading session in positive territory, despite a raised price target and a positive note to start the day. Andrew Orr over at Apple Insider wrote up a note from Rosenblatt Securities that had the firm surveying over 1,100 adults in the U.S. The survey found that many already had bought or are expecting to buy an iPhone 14 model in the next 12 months. As with most findings to this point, orders and intent skew to the pro side, so much so that Rosenblatt raised its price target on Apple shares from $160 to $189. That kind of got drowned out. The other bit of unfun on Thursday was the Apple exec I mentioned. Apple Insider says some TikTok and Instagram creator quizzed some guy in a fancy car on camera. The content creator, Daniel Mack, apparently asks people with super swank cars what they do for a living. The guy he interviewed gave a pretty crude answer. He wasn't just some guy, though. He was Tony Blevins, an Apple VP who works on procurement. Or did. I won't say what he said, but I will thank friend of the show Keith, at MyMacGuru on Twitter, for giving Blevins' answer a bit of context. His response to the inquiry about what he does for a living was kind of a riff on Dudley Moore's answer to the same question in the opening credits of the 1981 film Arthur. But his answer was more boorish than Arthur's, and it's not 1981. According to Apple Insider, the video got over 40,000 likes on Instagram and 1.3 million views on TikTok. The clip was found by some employees of Apple's operations and procurement teams that Blevins heads as vice president. Or did. Employees reportedly reported the video. HR investigated. Apple COO Jeff Williams, Blevins' boss for most of his 22 years at Apple, apparently made the decision about Blevins' departure. In a statement to Bloomberg, Apple Insider says Blevins said, "I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely apologize to anyone who was offended by my mistaken attempt at humor." So, really not a super day in Apple Park. More news in a moment, but first a word from today's sponsor, Trade Coffee. I don't know that I would say that coffee is a weakness of mine, but it is a creature comfort. I would rather have no coffee than bad coffee, and thankfully I get excellent coffee from Trade Coffee. They're experts at like coffee machines, tasting hundreds of coffees from across the U.S. every month to find over 450 exceptional coffees ready to send to you. Want to try some of my favorites? try the macOS Ken collection. And no, I'm not kidding. They've been sending me coffee. I've been rating that coffee. And from that, a wonderful collection of dark roasts has grown. See, light, medium, and dark doesn't cut it. I prefer a dark, but I want that dark to be rich and complex. That's what those experts look for and what you will get with the macOS Ken collection. Not a dark roast fan? Not a problem. Trade will have whatever it is you want. You can pick from their most popular coffees or do what I did. Take their coffee quiz and get matched with coffees chosen by their experts for you. So if you want to support small businesses and brew the best cup of coffee you have ever made at home, it's time to try Trade Coffee. Right now, Trade is offering macOS Ken listeners a total of $30 off your first order plus free shipping at drinktrade.com/macOSKen. That's drinktrade.com/macOSKen for $30 off your subscription to coffees I am sure you're going to love. That's drinktrade.com/macOSKen for $30 off. And thanks to Trade Coffee for sponsoring today's show. Hurricane Ian hit Florida this week and it did not come to play. Substantial loss of life possible in Florida, says part of a headline from CNN. Worst thing ever in my whole life, said one survivor to the BBC. With record rainfall and winds as strong as 150 miles per hour at some points, it'll probably be a minute before the extent of damage is known. As it tends to in such times, Apple has pledged support. Company CEO Tim Cook hit Twitter Thursday morning saying, "We are keeping everyone being affected by Hurricane Ian in our thoughts, and we thank the first responders for helping those in harm's way. Apple is donating to relief efforts on the ground." Let us turn now to the comforting glow of television. 2 trailers from Apple TV Plus about which to tell you, and dates for 4 returning shows. On the kids front, Apple TV Plus issued a press release Thursday announcing a premiere date for the 2nd season of Hello Jack, The Kindness Show. The list of guest stars this season is off the charts, including Gillian Jacobs, Darcy Carden, Kristen Schaal, Kumail Nanjiani, and that list goes on. Kids and kids at heart can head back to Clover Grove next Friday, the 7th of October. On your way, you can catch the trailer on YouTube. Definitely not for kids is the Ewan McGregor, Ethan Hawke film, Raymond and Ray. A piece from Cult of Max says the two play half-brothers called together for the funeral of their less-than-stellar father. Together, says the piece, they try to discover who they've become as men, both because of their father and in spite of him. With such star power as McGregor and Hawke, news of a theatrical release is not a surprise. Cult of Max says Raymond and Ray will hit theaters on Friday, the 14th of October. It'll hit Apple TV Plus 1 week later, Friday, the 21st of October. You can, of course, catch a trailer for that on YouTube. Proving that TV does belong in the Apple TV Plus name, the Cupertino streamer has something like a returning fall roster. Well, late fall anyway. Apple Insider ran a piece Thursday covering premiere dates for returning shows. On the schedule, viewers can head back to the Mosquito Coast. The drama's back for its 2nd season on Friday, the 4th of November. Mythic Quest returns for its 3rd season on Friday, the 11th of November. You're excited. You get to enjoy your Thanksgiving before Slow Horses saunters back in. Season 2 of the Spy series hits Friday, the 2nd of December. And one that I did not expect, but I'm very excited to see, the 2nd season of the anthology series Little America lands on Friday, the 9th of December. We'll wrap the day with something even more fun than television to look forward to. It's television you can strap to your face. Travelin Tim has pushed on from the UK, hitting points in Europe. Mac Rumor says one of those was a university in Naples, Italy, that gave Apple CEO Tim Cook an honorary degree in innovation and international management. That cost him a Q&A session, and that gave him a chance to tease the planet with talk of augmented reality. Asked by a student what future tech excites him, Apple CEO said, "I'm super excited about augmented reality because I think that we've had a great conversation here today, but if we could augment that with something from the virtual world, it would have arguably been even better. So I think that if you, and this will happen clearly not too long from now, if you look back at a point in time, zoom out to the future and look back, you'll wonder how you led your life without augmented reality. Just like today, we wonder how did people like me grow up without the internet? And so I think it could be that profound, and it's not going to be profound overnight. Dude, uncool. I want it to be profound overnight. This will happen clearly not too long from now. I guess that'll have to do for now. On today's Daily Observations podcast from the Mac Observer, TMO Managing Editor Jeff Butts and I talk about Apple's bad day, Blevins' bad day, and some of our favorites from Apple TV+. That is all today on the Mac Observer's Daily Observations podcast, online at macobserver.com or wherever you get podcasts. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and sponsored by Trade Coffee. Get $30 off your first order plus free shipping at drinktrade.com/macOSKen. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSKen. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. Info at macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.